Today I'm going to take you through the process of designing and building my own custom screen mount for the Klipperscreen mod for my Voron 0.1. This will be mostly focusing on Fusion 360 to show you how I designed it, and hopefully will show you how I go about the approach of designing these custom projects. I'm by no means an expert or an engineer, but hopefully you'll learn something, and at the end I'll take you through the installation and setup as well. First thing we need to do when starting a project like this is to get the dimensions of what we need to build. Let's take the width and the length of the screen, and also we'll take the width and length of the mounting holes. Before we start, I want to say thank you to PCBWay for sponsoring this video. As you may have guessed from their name, they offer a huge range of PCB services, but that is not all. Head over to their website and you'll be able to get an instant quote from a huge range of services, from stainless steel sheet metal bending to titanium CNC machining. PCBWay can do it all. They'll even help you bring an idea to a global market with their OEM turnkey services. There's even more on offer, so be sure to head over to PCBWay.com today. So we've got the measurements for the screen and also the hole positions. So what we first of all going to do is we're going to create some user variables, and then hopefully if all goes well we will be able to change these variables and the design will be able to essentially mold around that. It's really important to think about how you're going to design this in a parametric way. With Fusion 360, because it's a parametric design, if you change things, things that are constraints to it or attached to it, they are also going to change. And one of the reasons why I'm doing this tutorial is so that then I can redraw this model that I made and I can do it in a better way, basically. Because honestly, when I'm using Fusion 360, I'm using it like a sketchbook. I'm kind of just drawing things on top of one another, dragging things, pulling things, or whatever. And what I always find is that when I need to make changes further back in the timeline or to other models or bodies, a lot of the time it will maybe like screw up things. I have to redraw things. So what I'm trying to do is I'm really trying to think about this as methodically as possible and thinking about if I change things, how is it going to affect other things as well. So first of all, let's go ahead and create some user parameters. I've got it hot linked here, change parameters, but you can go to modify, change parameters. And if you want to pin it to your toolbar, which I recommend that you do, unfortunately Fusion 360 doesn't give you a good way to have the parameters always visible. A lot of people have been requesting that it is visible on the screen and you can change it much easier. It's a bit annoying the way they do it like this, but this is the box that will come up. We want to add a user parameter. So you can call it whatever you want, but let's call this one the holes and width. I'll say W. We'll keep it in the unit of millimeters, and I know that that was 113 millimeters. We'll add another one and we will call this holes height, and I know that that was 86. And then also we'll do the screen size as well, so I know that that was screen, and we'll call that width, and that was, I'm just looking at my notepad here, 121 millimeters. We'll add another one. This was the screen height, and that was 77. Now also something that I'm going to do is I'm going to add a angle or a degree. So if we scroll down on the unit here and we select degree, and I'm just going to call this the angle, and we'll put in 30 for now, but we might change it. And this is basically just the angle at which the screen is going to be tilted. Because obviously I don't want it flat against the panel because it's kind of, for me, waist height. So I've got to kind of look down at it. I'd rather it was a little bit more easier for me to view. So if you just click on OK, close, this is the problem. You see that you have to keep on coming up, opening up this and changing it. It'd be really nice if you could dock it as a window. Fusion 360 doesn't have like dockable windows or anything like that. So for me personally, I always like to make a very quick model of what I'm going to be attaching it to. Like if I've got to screw something in, or it's got to line up with something that is already pre-made. So like with this bracket needs to bolt into the 1515 aluminium extrusion of my 3D printer. That will be the first thing that I draw. So at least I've got something to base the design from. We'll right click here and we'll click on the new component, and we'll just call this the 15 by 15 X, which is extrusion. Click on OK. So now let's create our first sketch. So we'll draw this on the Z plane here, and I know that I want this to be 15 by 15. So we'll just draw a rectangle, and then you press tab to go to the next dimension here. Then we will press E on the keyboard to extrude it. We'll select the drawing and then we will extrude it up. Let's just make this 110. That should be enough. I'm going to come back into this drawing. So I need to compensate for the Perspex panel as well, and that will just offset it slightly. I'm going to give it, I think it's about 2 or 3 mil. I could measure it, but honestly, I'm just going to put 3 mil for the height, and we'll just say 15. And then we'll extrude this as well. So if we click on this, we'll extrude it up to the top here. Now we don't want to join it. I do want it separate. So I want it as a new body. Click on new body, and then there we go. Now, just for our visual representation, let's change the appearance of it. So if we just press A on the keyboard, it will bring up the appearance panel. Let's just type in acrylic here. You may have to download these if they're not available on yours, but we'll put this as acrylic. I want to add some aluminium, and I make it blue. I think mine is actually blue as well, so, or is it orange? There we go. So this is the extrusion that we're going to be basing the bracket off of. So if we look at a top section, I'm going to kind of draw out roughly, what I'm aiming to do with this bracket, so you've got an idea. Basically going to attach on here like this, and it's going to come out around like that. So it's going to be like an L shape around this, and then this is where the actual screen will be here. So that's what we need to draw next. Let's go ahead and create a new component. We'll right click on the top component, new component, and this will be the bracket. So we'll call it bracket, click on OK. So now we will draw this. So let's come back to our home view. We'll click on create a new sketch, and we're going to be drawing it off of this extrusion because I need the holes of this bracket to line up in the middle of this extrusion. So let's go ahead and we'll draw in the bracket now. So I'm going to use a 2-point rectangle, and we'll start over in this corner, and we'll bring it over, and let's just make it 90. Now, the reason why I'm not going the full length of this extrusion is that the Voron has only got a 100 by 100 print area. So whenever I'm designing these things, most of the time I would like things to be printed in Voron because that's the printer that is the quickest for me for prototyping. So I'm going to keep this under that 100 mil threshold here. So if I make the bracket 90, then I should be able to fit it in here. I know that this is going to be 18 because we've obviously got the 15 extrusion, we've got the 3 mil perspex, and we'll draw that out. I am going to add in the holes, and because this is obviously centered, I don't need to worry about it being offset here. I don't have to draw a midpoint line and draw down. We'll just draw these anywhere at the moment. I know that this is in the midpoint, and these are going to be M3. So if I just make it like 4 mil, that should be enough. And let's just draw another one in down here. We'll make that 4 mil. Now let's put in the dimensions properly, and we'll make it from the top here. I think 20 mil is good. And we'll also do the same here. So we'll click on D for dimension, and then you select the sketches that you want to constrain via dimension, drag it out, type in 20. So that looks good for that. Now we're going to draw the angle of the bracket. So if we go up here, we'll choose the line tool. We'll click on this point. We'll just kind of draw it out anywhere because I'm going to add in the dimensions afterwards. That looks kind of about right. Let's see how accurate I am. We'll go to D for dimension. We'll click on this line here and this line. And now we've got our degree dimension. So I was pretty close. I can't remember what I put for angle. If I choose angle here, there we go. You can see 30. And then obviously, we can come in and we can change those parameters, and this will change with it. So a few things that I want to do now is I just want to add some fillets, and we'll just select where we want them. And I actually want these to only be 2 mil, just slight radiuses. You could make this entire bracket here solid. I don't think it needs to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on O for offset, and we'll just offset this triangle. And I think if we give it 5mm offset, that should be enough. And then again, we'll just come in with the fillet. We'll just select these, and we'll just say 2mm. That should be enough. Okay, so now we can go ahead and we can finish the sketch. We can press E, and we will extrude this. So let's select the sketches that we want to extrude. And let's say that we want to extrude this out by, I think 5mm should be enough. And always when I'm designing these things, yeah, I'm kind of guessing these thicknesses really, but 5mm should be thick enough to hold this. Okay, so that's good. But if you remember that we wanted it to be an L shape, so I wanted it to kind of bend around here as well. So what we're going to do is we will bring back the sketch that we drew. If we go to the bracket, we go to sketches, you can see that once you extrude a sketch, it sets the visibility off. We can actually bring it back up, and now we've got this sketch again. And if we press E on the keyboard, we'll select this specific sketch and we'll extrude it out this way as well. And if we do it, let's just do it to, I think if we just go to the top view here, we'll bring it out by 15. So it's just flush with this extrusion. So that looks about right, and we'll click on OK. And now we've got that L wrapping around the extrusion, and we've got our bracket looking about right. One last thing that I want to do to this bracket is I just want to put a fillet on this edge here. I don't want too many sharp corners like this. When you're 3D printing, just try and round the corners. It just makes it a little bit easier on your printer. So if we press F to bring up the fillet, I just select this line here, and again, yeah, just add a 2mm, and that should be enough. So that's kind of rounded that off a little bit. And then we will just make this sketch invisible again. We don't need it. So you can see that because we use the parameter, we've got this 30 degrees. I can go ahead and change that to 45 degrees. And there we go. So now it's at a 45-degree angle. And I'm just making sure that nothing is broken. And it should be all the way through the design like this. When you just change the parameters, too many things shouldn't break and look terrible. So now we want to construct the panel and also the screen bracket that's going to actually hold the screen. So what we want to do is we want to, first of all, create a new component. So we right click on the top component, click on new component, and this will be the, I guess we'll call it the screen plate. Click on OK. So now we want to construct a offset plane. So we'll click this, and we're going to be basing this plane on this angle here. So we'll select this angle, and now we will just offset it. So I know that I'm going to have a backing plate, and then I know that I've got, I think my standoff nuts for the screen are an extra 6mm, and then I've actually got the screen. So we want to draw, I want to draw the screen first of all. So we've got 1, and then if we plus by 6, so that's 7mm, that should be enough. So we'll offset that. And now what I want to do is I want to start sketching on this plane here. So create a sketch, and we will select this plane. Now, what I want to do as well is I want to save this view at this angle, because there's a possibility that once you click on your home view, you've got no way of actually coming back to this specific 30-degree angle view. These ones are just at a 45 degree. So we'll go to named views, click on a drop down here, and we'll click on new named view. And we'll just call this the angle. Because you see that if I go to home, just finish this sketch for now. So if I go to the home view, you can see that, yep, I can rotate here, but how to actually get so I'm perfectly parallel with this angle here, it's quite difficult. And if I click here, well, that just takes me to a 45-degree angle, which isn't right. So now that we've got this named view, if I click on the angle view, you can see it's always going to take me back to this view here, where we are nice and parallel with this angle. And if you don't create a named view, you can always just use the look at command. So if we come back to the home view, for instance, and you're trying to get it perfectly flat with this angle here, if you use the look at, click on what you want to look at, and it will bring you back to that point. That's another way of doing it. I just like to keep it up here in a named view so I can just refer to it quickly. This is another quirky thing that Fusion 360 does. You can see that it's not aligned it so that the Z-axis is pointing upwards when I've clicked on this sketch. I'm not sure of a way to actually fix this to make sure it does it all the time. But if you click on, again, look at, you choose what you want, and then for some reason it seems to work correctly and point it upwards. Anyway, let's go ahead and now draw in the screen. So what we want to do first of all is we want to create some construction lines, and this is going to be where the holes are going to be placed, and also the actual screen size as well. I'm not really concerned at the moment whereabouts I'm putting it, because I'm going to move it after I've actually made the entire thing, so I've got it lined up with this main bracket. For now, I just want to get it sketched out, and if we just put it anywhere really, it doesn't matter. This will be the hole position. So this was holes. Start typing in and you can see it brings up the user parameters. So this will be the hole's width. This will be the hole's height. So now I've got the dimensions for the holes. Also, what I want to do is I want to sketch out the actual screen size. Now this won't be a construction, so I can turn this off, but I do want it centered as well. So this again will be screen width, and we'll put in screen height. Now I can go ahead, and this is going to be essentially the border that goes around the screen. This is going to be what I'm machining out of some wood. So I'm going to make this, let's make it like 12mm frame essentially around the screen. So I'm going to click on O to offset. I'm going to offset it around the actual screen, and we'll say -12. Click on OK. So now I've got the frame. You can see this, obviously this center point is where the screen is going to be, and these are the holes, and this should be accurately placed. So now last thing to do is to just draw these holes. We'll click on the center point circle. We'll just zoom in a little bit so you can see what I'm doing, and these are going to be, these are M3 as well, so we'll just make it 3.5. Should be enough. Now you could draw these circles in a rectangular pattern. I actually want them to be constrained to this construction dimension that I've drawn, and that is so that when I change those parameters, those construction lines are also going to change, and because I'm constraining these holes to these points, they should also change in proportion to those things. So let's just finish drawing these circles. So now we will go ahead and extrude this. So we click on E, and this is going to be the thickness of the screen essentially. I want the wooden frame to be flush with the top of the screen. So we'll choose this, sketch, and then we'll extrude it, and we'll make this will be 6mm. So we choose 6, press OK, and we can make it wood. So we've got A for the appearance, and if we just type in bamboo, we'll just bring up some bamboo here. And this will just help me to identify what is what here. So I'm going to be using socket head M3 bolts for this. So I actually need to create a little pocket inside of these to make sure that the socket head is flush. Obviously, if you're using, I don't know, like countersunk ones or button head, then maybe you don't need to do that. But we will do that right now. So we'll go ahead and we'll create a sketch. We'll create a sketch on the top of this, and now we will go ahead and draw this, and the socket head is 5, so we'll just put it 5.5. It should be enough. And again, I'm just going to draw these in, extrude these down to accommodate the socket head. So we'll just extrude these minus, let's just say minus, not 6, -4. Okay, there we go. And you can see, let's go ahead and test it. If we open up the parameters, let's pretend that we got the hole's height wrong, which first time I designed this, I did actually get it wrong. I think I put it as 85 and it was just off. Yeah, it ruined the print. Now let's pretend that we want this to be actually 90. Let's pretend we got it wrong. You can see that the holes are distributed appropriately. You can change it to say like, 105 for instance. Let's pretend we got it wrong. There we go. And obviously they're always in the center and the frame around it is adjusting. So that's good. It's not broken anything, so we know that it's working. So now we'll kind of get it moved into position. So let's go to the angle view. And I want the edge of this frame in line with this extrusion. I think that should be enough. So we can just right click, move, and we'll just bring it over So that looks about right. And again, I'm just doing this by eye. It's not really crucial exactly whereabouts it's positioned. We obviously just want to make sure that it's not hitting into this perspex panel here. So I'm going to move this actually over. I'm going to say 8 by -8. Basically want it just in line really with these points here and here roughly. So that looks about right. So now we can go ahead and we can create the backing plate. So I'm going to create another construction plane. We'll create an offset plane. We do want to capture the position of everything. I'm going to just create a plane on this edge here. I don't need to offset it. And now we will click create sketch and we will draw on this one. And again, you can see that it's just rotated it. We click on look at. There we go. I don't know why it does that, but it's really annoying. So this is going to be a really simple part because this is essentially just going to be copying the size of the wooden frame that we created. And then I'm just creating a slight drop and just some holes so it can actually just bolt into the bracket here. So this is really easy to do. All you do is press P to project. You select what you want to project. So we want to project this frame that we just created. Press OK. And you can see now it has projected this drawing onto it. And again, it's projecting from this screen. If we change the parameters, if we come here, we can just double check this. If I change the parameters, let's change the screw holes, for instance. If we change that to 120, you can see that it brings it up, and that's fine. It's projected it, and those holes are in the same position. Good. We want to also, because we want to make sure that this backing plate is flush with this edge here, I'm going to project this face here as well. And now I can just go ahead and, just draw this out. I'm just doing this by hand really. We'll draw this line here. We'll bring it down to like this point where this curve is. And then I'll just connect that with, we'll connect it with the edge of this screen here. And now lastly, I just need to project one more thing. You can see it's projected the holes that are going to take the socket heads and not the holes, the 3.5 holes for the M3 bolts, which is what needs to go through. So we'll bring up project again and we'll just project these holes and we'll click on OK. And now if we go ahead and extrude, so we want to extrude this, extrude that, and we'll extrude that. If we just flip it over here, we want to just select these. So now we want to extrude this, and again, this is the thickness of the material, whatever you're going to be using. I've got some 1mm aluminium plate sitting around, which I'm going to use for this. So I'm just going to press 1 for the thickness, press OK, and there we go. So this is how it's going to sit. You can see I'm going to have my standoff nuts in between here, and the screen's obviously going to sit in here, and that looks about right. So now all we need to do is we just need to put some holes in this and also holes into this bracket, and that's how I am going to connect this backing plate with the bracket. So what we can do actually is we can again test it, and this is what I'm going to always start doing now, is just testing it and just seeing if things start breaking when I change things. So if we change this to 40 degrees, you can see that brilliant, that entire thing, because we've based the construction planes off of this face here, whenever I change the angle of this, they all follow, and you can see that now it's looking fine. And you can see that these other drawings follow that. That's brilliant. And if we just need to like tweak the width, for instance, of the holes, and you can see that that brings it all together, and they're still in line because they are being constrained to one another. Okay, so lastly we will just create these holes. So we will click on create sketch, and we want to select this, the metal plate here, and what I want to do is I want to project this line here, because this is really what I've got to go from with the bolts, because this is the face where the holes are going to actually be going through. So if I click on project, and if I just project that line, it will actually be enough, but if we just spin this around and we select this entire face, that should be okay. Yeah, there we go. So we click on OK. So now this is where the holes are going to go through. And again, if we just click, look at this. This is the space that I've got really. I've got to be careful though, because obviously the bolts coming through here, if I put, the hole right up here and the bolt coming through, I don't actually have that much space for it to go through. So really I want it like to come through here, and the same goes for this. You know, if I put it here, I'm going to really struggle to get a nut and a bolt through that. So really I want it kind of like here. Yeah, I'm just doing this by eye. I'm just kind of like drawing it in. I will just kind of add dimensions and just tweak it. We will create a line, we'll create a construction, and we'll create a midline here. So I know that my circles will be constrained to that. We'll click on the center circle, we'll turn off the construction, and we'll just draw these anywhere because we're going to add dimensions later. This is going to be a 6mm M6 bolt. So we'll just say 6.5, and we'll draw another one in anywhere just on this line. As long as it's constrained to that line, that's fine. 6.5, and now we can just go to dimension from this to this. We'll just say for now, let's just say 15. We'll dimension from this to this, and we'll just say, yeah, 20 for now. So what I can do is I can come in here, and I can just eyeball this, and I can see that actually I've got quite a lot of space here. I can easily bring this down a little bit if I want to. So I can double click on this dimension, actually say, you know, bring it down to 15. That looks fine. And this top one, I think we can maybe give it a little bit more space to bring in. There we go. So I can easily get a nut and bolt through there. I've got plenty of space. That looks okay. So we'll finish the sketch, and then we will just click on E to extrude. We'll select these 2 points, and then we'll bring the extrusion all the way through, affecting also this bracket. You can see the objects to cut. It's actually going to cut through the bracket as well, which is what I want. We bring up the main view here, and if we just make this roughly the same color as the filament, so if I just put in like red plastic, we'll just put in a red matte, so we just got an idea of what this is going to look like. So there we go. That is the aluminium backing plate, this is the wooden frame, and this is the 3D printed bracket here, and that looks good. And if we again just go ahead and test it just to make sure that, you know, we're not breaking anything, let's just change this to 45 again, and you can see that this has now added a 45-degree angle, and this circle is still this distance away from this face here. So we can see that that works fine. It looks like the placement of that, and if we just measure that, we can remember that I think we constrained this by 18. So we press I to bring up the measure. We'll just measure this. So that's 14.75 from the edge, and obviously because that's 6.5, yeah, that takes it up to 18. So that's good. So let's constrain it to that point there. So that is the Fusion 360 part done now. I can go ahead and print this. I can CNC machine the parts that I need. So let's get on with those steps. I'm using some spare Elecrow wood that I had, and I'm doing a 2D adaptive operation first to remove the bulk of the wood. Then I'm doing the pockets and contours to cut out the frame. I'm using 1 tab each side of the frame and using a chisel to remove. A quick sand and then a few coats of Danish oil, and this part is finished. I should have compensated an extra millimeter to the frame thickness because after sanding it was no longer flush with the screen. Next I machined the backing plate from an aluminium sheet. This stuff is so gummy as thin aluminium sheet is usually the grade 1050, which is terrible for machining, as you will quickly find out. Always try to work with 6061 or 6082 if you can. This needed a lot of sanding to get rid of all of those edges. Fixing together is very easy thanks to the nuts that come with the screen, and after all that, this aluminium sheet wasn't rigid enough to hold the screen anyway. It flexes when pressing the screen, which is slightly annoying, so I printed a 3mm PETG backing plate the same shape to reinforce it, and it's now very rigid. I could have just skipped the aluminium plate, but I wanted to have the dark wood and matte aluminium aesthetic for this piece, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. So that's the part finished. Hopefully you enjoyed this tutorial. I'm going to put the files on Thingiverse and Printables if you want to CNC them, or you can 3D print the entire thing as well. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you later.